The Financial Times recently published an article titled "Americans Have More Money, Europeans Have More Time. Which is better?" Time and money are two important resources that people who are striving to achieve financial freedom want more of. So in the video, I'm going to tell you what the key points of this article are, analyze it in a little bit of detail, and then at the end, I'll give you my thoughts. Let's get right into it. If you're new here, my name is Jonny. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living and working in Spain for the past 4.5 years, and I'm passionate about financial freedom, travel abroad, and an international lifestyle. So this article from the FT, which I'll link in the video description for those of you who want to go and read the full thing, is quite an interesting read. It covers a lot of points, and it's essentially focused on the work-life balance aspect of things. And whilst that's not necessarily the angle I'm going to look at it from, a lot of what the author says is still relevant when we're looking at this from a general time versus money perspective. So there's one paragraph in the article that pretty much summarizes it all for me, and that's the following paragraph. Europeans and Americans do things differently. Europeans have more time and Americans more money. It is a cop-out to say which you prefer is a matter of taste. There are three fairly objective measures of a good society: how long people live, how happy they are, and whether they can afford the things they need. And so essentially, to back that up, the author talks about working hours in the year, so looks at how Americans typically work 1,800 hours per year versus the European average of 1,500. And the author mentions as well that because employees work more in the US, they're more productive in that sense, then they have higher salaries than the majority of European countries, with the exception being 4 European countries, which are Ireland, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and Norway. In addition, this isn't part of the article, but some research I did myself. When you look at net worth, when you compare in the US and Europe, you can see that net worth by age typically in the US is higher than in most European countries as well when looking at that. And so theoretically speaking, those higher incomes translate into higher net worths as well. But keep in mind, of course, that in the US and Europe, in most households, the majority of one's net worth is made up by, their home that they own. All right, so now that we've summarized the key points of the article, what the author is essentially saying is that Americans have more money because they work more and they're more productive, and Europeans essentially have more time because they don't work as much. So why do Americans work more and why do Europeans work less? Are there cultural factors influencing this? So what I'm going to share now is my understanding of both societies. Obviously, I'm a European. I live in Europe. I've visited the United States, but it was over 10 years ago. I've never lived there. These are just my observations from friends, family, professional network, etc. And if you're watching and you've lived in both the US and Europe, I'd love to hear how your thoughts compare to mine. So do leave a comment and I'd love to hear about your experience. So in the US, there's of course the famous concept of the American dream, which can be defined as the belief that anyone can attain their own version of success in a society where upward mobility is possible for everyone. I think this is very much true, and historically, people from around the world have been drawn to the United States because of that, because they see the US as the land of opportunity. Like if you want to start a business, if you want to build wealth, if you want to make it in sports or entertainment, then going over to the US, that is the place to be. That's where you can make it happen. You can make it essentially. Because it's the land of opportunity and so many people want to make it and hit the big time, whether it's, in sports or entertainment industry, but even just in the professional career as well, move up the professional ladder, then of course it becomes very competitive. And of course you find yourself in very competitive environments where it's very intense and you're working very, very hard to achieve what you desire, to outwork the others. And so we hear terms such as the rat race being coined to describe this competitive dogfight, essentially, for people to work their way up and get to the top, because it's all about outworking the next person and being the best. In addition to that, typically workers in the US have much fewer holidays when it comes to working as well. It's also typically a much faster process if an employee is being laid off or fired or moving from job to job in that respect as well. So people are working more because they have less time off, and they're also perhaps working harder so that they're, not at the bottom of the pile in terms of, their co-workers, their competition in that sense. So that is my understanding of the US, its culture and how it works. Europe, economically and socially, is quite differently structured. In Europe, we typically have more of a welfare state model. And a welfare state can essentially be defined as a concept of government in which the state or a well-established network of social institutions play a key role in the protection and promotion of the economic and social well-being of citizens. It's based on the principles of equality of opportunity, equitable distribution, redistribution of wealth and public responsibility for those unable to avail themselves of the minimal provisions for a good life. And so we see that across a lot of countries in Europe where there are a lot of social, economic benefits available to people who are maybe struggling to get by, who are unemployed. There's free public healthcare in a lot of European countries. Workers have generally good holiday allowances as well. And, the months of July and August are typically very quiet periods because a lot of people are taking time off work and they're going on holiday. There's also more importance around the social aspects of life, such as spending time with family and friends, and time spent with the people who are close to you is very important in Europe. I was watching a video comparing work culture in Europe versus the US. They said basically that Europeans work to live, whereas they think Americans live to work. Meaning that Europeans are more likely to see their career, their job as a means to an end, essentially, to get money, to live and to survive. Whereas Americans, on the other hand, are more focused on getting the most out of their job, being the best they can, and as a result, spend more time, as we've looked at through the statistics. One other difference between Europe and the US is taxes as well. So taxes in Europe typically tend to be a lot higher. So it might be the case as well that when you get to a certain level in Europe, you could be getting taxed 40-50% on any income earned over a certain threshold in some countries. So perhaps some people get to a point and then they see that as a disincentive because they're only going to see half of the money they earn over a certain point. It's possible because although one might make the argument that, taxes in the US are high, typically in Europe, taxes are still higher. So these are my thoughts. These are my observations. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so do leave a comment as well. And so now that we've looked at that, let's take a look at the argument of time versus money and which one is more valuable. So first of all, perhaps stating the obvious, but time can be used to make money, and it's probably what the majority of us watching the video do on a daily basis. Whether we're working, whether we have a side hustle, we're trading that time that we have in exchange for financial benefit. And so once we get that money, we typically spend it, whether it's on necessities, whether it's on things that we want, or we can invest it, or we can save it. But what we perhaps don't consider is that we can also use money to buy back our time. It's something that's talked about a lot for business owners, for entrepreneurs, as it's something that you'll get to a point and you really need to start doing it because you can't do everything yourself. And there's people that can do certain things better than you. And for you to be able to have a global vision, to be able to oversee everything, then you do need to start buying back your time at some point. But is that to say that buying back your time is only for entrepreneurs? Not at all. The average person who works, even though you're in a very different situation as an entrepreneur, even small things such as paying someone to clean the house or paying an accountant to do a tax return is buying back your time. It's time that you can use to do something else, whether it's work on your side hustle, whether it's just spend more time with your family, whether it's sit down, watch the TV, relax, whatever you want to do, you've bought yourself back a couple of hours there for you to enjoy. And so why might someone want to buy back their time? Why would they not want to just save the money, or would they not want to just use that time to make more money? The answer to that, for me, is the difference between time and money. So money is infinite. That means they can always be made, it can be earned, it can be printed, even if we're looking at, central banks, in infinite quantities. There is no limit to how much money can be made, printed, whatever. When you invest money, it can be compounded and it can grow over time. And in the case of some businesses, money is scalable. That means that for 10 hours spend, I could make 100 euros or I could make 100,000 euros if my business is something that, the time I put in, it doesn't change the output. Like, for example, content creation. I can spend 5 hours making a video. It could reach 100 people. It could reach 1 million people. The time I've spent doesn't change. And so why is that important? Well, I think it's important because time, on the other hand, is finite. Each of us has our own unique financial situation. Some people have more money, some people have less than others, but every one of us has 24 hours in a day that we have to spend on whatever it is that we need to do. And the reality is that sooner or later, we will run out of days. Our days here on Earth are limited, and there'll come a point when we can no longer do the things that we want to do and that we love. So you could have all the money in the world, no time to enjoy it, no time to make memories, no time to spend with family and friends. So for me, that makes time more valuable than money. But does that mean that the European way of doing things is the right way? Now, when I went to the US, as I say, almost 10 years ago, I don't know what it was, but I got this vibe of you can make it here. This is where entrepreneurial spirit, where the hustle is at. Kind of thing. And it was really cool. It was a really cool vibe. And it stuck with me for a bit after that trip. And I sometimes, think back to it. And when I need inspiration and motivation for what I do, a lot of the voices, a lot of the content I watch is from American creators because they have that hustle, that hard work mentality. Not that Europeans don't have it, of course. there are Europeans that work hard and have a hard work mentality. I'm just saying that a lot of the content that I consume from there, it comes from American creators. But fast forward 10 years to where I am now, I've grown up, I'm working full time and I'm working in Europe. So I have a work-life balance. And because my job, is quite intense, it can be stressful. I really appreciate, time off, work-life balance, the fact that I have, public holidays, I have a good holiday allowance, and I can take time off without feeling bad for missing work. I can, have time with my friends and family without worrying about, what's going on at work. And that's great. So basically, as with everything, I think there needs to be a balance. We need money to survive. We need money, if we have dreams, aspirations, goals to achieve, then in most cases, I would even say, we need some money to have the resources to be able to turn those dreams into reality. And as I explored in a recent video as well, having money, it can give you more options, not just in terms of buying back your time or buying more things, but, being able to travel around the world, being able to move abroad, investments, making more money, maybe securing a visa in a different country, for example. Some people want to become incredibly rich, want to build a lot of wealth. Some people just want to build a lifestyle, that's sustainable for them and where they can cover their outgoings and then they have enough money from that. Both approaches are fine, to be honest, from my perspective. It does very much depend what you want in life. But for me, the sweet spot is like financial independence. So, it's very subjective. What is financial independence? But on the podcast that I recently launched, I had Panda Boss Anna as a guest. And I think the way she defined it, what financial independence means for her, she defined it as working with who I want, when and where I want. So you having full control and not being dependent on making money to survive. You can make money as much or as little as you please, and you'll be fine. Remember, as much as money is important, it will only make you happy up to a certain point, and it's not the be all and end all of life. And I definitely encourage you, don't miss out on life, on experiences, on time with family and friends at the expense of chasing money. Those are my thoughts, guys. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful. Leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on this great debate. Till next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.